Moving on to the progress that's been made, there's been a tremendous amount of work in the collection system. We call it the RDI&I reduction program. Engineers have a lot of acronyms. But essentially what we're doing is we've been studying and we're focusing on the leakiest basins, the worst basins. We want to get the best bang for our buck. And the worst basins were basins 2 and 8. Those were started 2 years ago. They finished earlier this year. And this year, starting in January, we went through a process where we hired an engineer that completed a design, went out for CMGC, and we're now under construction for basins 6 and 7. Furthermore, we're moving ahead to start investigating the next 2 leakiest basins, which happen to be basin 5 as well as basin 10. So kind of to sum up what's going on, we've done some preliminary modeling looking at the amount of the clean water that's getting into those pipes by tightening up and rehabbing these systems. How much water have we, removed that won't be conveyed to our treatment plant? Basin 2 and 8 right now, we do need to validate it, but it's anticipated we've reduced the peak flows coming in by 2 million gallons per day. That's a lot. Basin 6 and 7, the anticipated reduction, this is going to be completed winter 2023, another 1.2 million gallons per day for a total peak flow reduction of about 3.2. We are going through a very extensive process. We're installing rain gauges throughout the Sandy system, flow monitoring. We're working very closely with DEQ and EPA on this. And there's going to be a very, very rigorous data collection and model validation period to confirm this reduction of the flows. And we're anticipating on getting that, depending on when the data collection stops, spring, I would say late spring 2023. In addition, we are going to start a capacity management and operation and maintenance program. Essentially, what it makes us keep up on investigating our system. So we'll continuously monitor, we'll smoke test, we'll make sure that our pipes don't disintegrate again. We're going to keep up on this and keep the clean water out of our system. We are also going to be moving forward. We're going to be investigating the remaining basins by 2025. So probably looking at about 2 every year for 2025. Speaking with a lot of our neighboring agencies, ones such as Gresham, they found that doing the CMOM program, grouting manholes is, I'm getting way into the weeds, but it's very cost effective, very inexpensive, very cost effective. And those are 2 words that we all like. So number 2, the treatment, the replacement and expansion. We are working extremely hard on the immediate needs improvement project. That's to rehab and build some expansion to some bottlenecks in treatment at our existing wastewater treatment plant. It is a very, very difficult time to do this. It's very hard to get vendors to commit to things. There's a lot of variables, but right now we're on target for construction to complete in February 2023. Stress test. So once the new system is upgraded, completed, all the electronics work, only then, because we want that system to be as in as best shape as possible, then we're going to undergo a stress test. We're going to be monitoring how the system does beforehand. We're going to push it to the maximum for treating both loads and flows. We're actually starting the development of this plan, which is due at the end of this month. And once that stress test is completed, we'll do the analysis. We'll be working closely with the EPA and DEQ, and that will translate to the number of remaining connections we think are at the treatment plant. So it's a long process, a lot of data. In anticipation of that stress test, we also hired some contractors by the name of Water Dude to help us. And we've identified a number of other weak links within our system. We've been placing orders for $200,000 worth of equipment, spares, parts, just to shore up our system so that stress test performs as best as possible. We also put out an RFQ for a facility plan amendment, and we have selected a firm and are through negotiations on just finalizing the amendment and schedule with DEQ as we speak. And finally, I noticed a little typo there. I am thinking ahead. We do need to move ahead with a program management, which is staff augmentation as well as help as we move forward with expanding the existing treatment plant, moving forward on other parts of our program. We did issue a notice of intent to award for program management services to Stantec, and I am starting to negotiate with them. It's going to be a dual contract. They will also be helping with our water, our drinking water. As I've mentioned, I need an RFP written next January, as well as helping with funding. This is a long list. I don't have to go through all these things, but they're in the presentation. Aeration basin improvements. The plant has had a very significant bottleneck in terms of a filter, which has caused much of the wet weather violations. This filter, I was out touring the plant, is still not there, but it's supposed to be arriving this month and will be installed. So it's going to be really, really good to see the results of what that plant can do once that piece of equipment arrives. Keep moving forward. Our owner's rep, Leeway Engineering, did sort of an anticipated results of what we think we're going to be. The green line shows the capacity of the treatment plants. The blue line shows what we think is in our collection system. And so, as you can see, we do show that we don't quite have enough capacity at the wastewater treatment plant for some of these higher wet weather flows. But as you see at the end of 2022, what we're looking at is more capacity at the treatment plant, which is the blue line. I'm sorry, the green line, higher capacity at the treatment plant, lower peak flows from all the rehabs. So you see those, you know, it shows that we have more capacity. So really, really good positive story there. Keep going. And then finally, the new effluent disposal location. For over a year now, the city has been working with Parametrics as our consultant, collecting data for an MPDS application for Sandy River outfall. And I'm ready to tell you that this application is ready to submit to DEQ. It's a long and iterative process. DEQ will probably be in review for about a year. We are asking for 7 million gallons per day. This would be the equivalent of Class A recycled water. And it's going to be a long process. I'm anticipating, from what I've been told, 8 years plus or minus to permit and construct the outfall. So this is definitely a longer term solution. And the first step is really getting through the DEQ review and seeing what results they say. But we've also made a lot of progress, and that's an important next step in our long-term solution.
Before you go,
Yes.
can you elaborate on what you mean by what EPA says, or what is said? You said as the permit process goes, they will tell us what. It's not like getting a driver's license permit where just pass the test and they give you a permit, right?
No, there's a significant amount of study of our results. They're looking at the waste load application, the impact to fish health, riverine health. It's a really complicated process because they have to be convinced that the engineering and the scientific and the technical analysis is solid to permit the additional flows. And they will also give us what they think the times of when we could discharge there. I've been told October is a very low flow month. It's unlikely we would get a year-round permit. And they will come back with their calculations of how much flow we think we can go there, what temperature mitigation we would have to do, and how long. So it's a complicated process. It's not done very often. It is very iterative. There's multiple permits. It's going to be a long process, but just to give that timing in place. This is a big milestone, and the city has been working towards this for well over a year now. So what's changed since the 2019 facility plan besides everything the world's experienced? No joking aside, the 2019 facility plan looked at many different combinations of collection system rehab as well as treatment plant improvements. And where they landed was rehabilitating only 2 basins, not all the basins like we're currently doing. And so to sum it up, the 2019 facility plan projected Sandy would have a peak flow of 14 million gallons per day. However, because we have been, through collaboration with DEQ as well as other recommendations, we have done more rehab of the collection system. Our peak flow right now, just with the 4 basins we've rehabbed, has dropped down to 10.8 MGD. And with our intention of continuing to rehab the additional 6 basins, we do anticipate that number will sink down. What that means is we need to build less treatment, which will save money. And that is, it's very important in this environment when it's extremely expensive to build.
Question?
Yeah.
Yeah, but,
Yeah.
yeah, but, we're also have all these, developments happening. So help me understand that. I get it that we're going to get a little bit more capacity doing, fixing some of the leaks, but we're also getting like double the density on our development parcels that are going under development. So how do we accommodate that growth for the next 20 years and not end up here again?
Well, this facility, I mean, this is a common problem. Facility plans look at projected growth and they make reasonable assumptions of what will happen in the future. But, recessions hit, towns don't grow as fast or they grow faster. I mean, to answer your question, the facility plan and the facilities being built are based on population. And so we can tie that to the growth that we see. And so that will help calculate the load that's treated. There's units and the treatment at the treatment plant are sized. They have different functions. Some of them just pass the peak flow through and some of them actually treat the load. So, and the load is tied to the development. So
We're going to be able to accommodate 20 years worth of growth with this updated 2019 facility plan?
no, one of the, let me summarize what I think you're asking. There are a lot of changes, and what's really important to us now is we keep moving ahead. The question in all of our minds based on this reduction is, do we have to build 2 plants or could we build one larger plant on property we already own? Reopening the facility plan to restart with the population projections and all the growth would be a multi-year process. And the city spent an awful lot of time planning. We'll be able to tie the population projections to when the growth occurs. But what we're intending to do is basically relook at plans that were looked at in the existing facility plan, but not selected moving forward because they elected to do fewer rehab of collection systems. Does that?
That's why, so it's just a freshening up of it as opposed.
It's a modification to show what we've done. We're not reopening it to redo the population growth and projections because that would be, it would be a much longer process. And we've already invested the time with that facility plan. We're trying to move forward.
Growth is forecasted in the facility.
Have we accurately estimated the growth in the plan we have? Given the double density stuff that.
To the best
Yeah,
of
no one
their
knows.
ability.
Who knows? The other thing that I know you brought up just a little bit, and I'd like to emphasize this, is that the 3 basin rule on the Clackamas River system is also a limiting factor. And I wish I could tell you how many million gallons a day that limit would be on our system, but I do know that the Clackamas River folks, that's where their drinking water is.
Mhm.
For those cities like Oregon City, ones that are down on the river there, and I probably say them wrongly, but that is a limiting factor. And even if we could make our input into the Tickle Creek plant being enough that the Tickle Creek plant can handle it, the 3 basin rule limits us from putting so much, whatever that line is, of treated sewage into that system, so that we have to do something different. there's a lot of pressure for us to go to Sandy River. Really. That's the reason why we're.
Yeah, it's you're exactly right. Tickle Creek is mass load limited. So what it meant is as we've grown, we have to remove more and more and more of the wastewater. And eventually it's just not possible to move anymore. So we do need to find an alternate discharge. And yes, you're correct. Going back to the 2019 facilities plan, we've talked about this a lot, but the black basically shows what was envisioned. This first phase, phase 1A, which is what we've been working on, is the MPDS permitting for the Sandy River outfall, collection system rehabilitation of basins 2 and 8, and the immediate needs wastewater treatment plant project. We've done all these things. Then it said build more treatment at a second treatment plant facility, the East Side Satellite facility, construct the new outfall and the new pipeline and the new outfall. Following that, you would look at rehab of basins 6 and 7 as well, all of this at the same time, continued system, collection system rehab work, as well as some additional rehab work at the existing wastewater treatment plants. And based on the direction we've gone with the collection system rehab, other alternatives were looked at in the original facility plan that are more in line with the direction we're going. And that would mean having we would expand on the existing site and treat all the wastewater here and then pump over to the outfall. And so a lot of that is what we're looking at the facility plan amendment, just to confirm that we can do that with the reduced flows. Moving on to the stress test and the facility plan amendment schedule. I have been working on this schedule since we put it together last May. And currently we're right here. We have a negotiated scope we're ready to bring to council, but it's very important that DEQ concurs with us. So I'm collaborating with them and hoping that we'll get resolution to this in the next couple of weeks. As I said, we are anticipating the current construction on the wastewater treatment plant will be done around February of this year. There are variables. There still are equipment that could be delayed. And I cannot emphasize this enough. We have to complete the construction on the plant. Everything needs to be arrived and be installed before we do the stress test. So it is in our best interest to do the stress test as quickly as possible, but there are some variables and it is possible that this could shift a month or so. Right now, the schedule shows us forecasting doing this around March. Following that, there'll be a lot of data analysis and a lot of corroboration with DEQ to agree. And we think that the results will be public sometime around May or June. This is the best knowledge we have. And I'm thinking that the facility plan the amendment will be available in June, depending on whether we want the results of the validation of the flow reduction we've received in basins 2 and 8 and 6 and 7, that may push off the date of the facility plan amendment. So these things are in discussion, but I wanted to show this is the schedule we're working towards, and everybody is working on this diligently. Again, I wanted to bring this back to the 3 pieces: the collections, the treatment, the effluent disposal. So the last 2-3 years, we've been working on the rehab of basins 2, 8, 6, and 7. What's coming up in 23 through 25? We'll be investigating the remaining basins. We'll also be doing a very, very diligent analysis confirming the I&I reduction we have received in our collection system. That'll happen in spring of 23. Following that, we'll be conducting CMOM as well as pump station upgrades, and we'll continue to maintain that system with a lot of attention going forward so that it doesn't revert to a leaky system. We want to keep it functioning very well. In terms of treatment, we're completing the construction project and the facility plan amendment going into 23 through 25. We're going to be completing the facility plan amendment And we'll be moving forward in design phase 1B. That's going to be the next phase of our wastewater treatment plant improvement. That will be costed out, and we will get the best path forward we can for the city. That's going to be dependent on the flows and the reduction that is confirmed that we did achieve here. What we're looking for is we want to build as small a treatment plant as possible. And then I see moving into the construction of phase 1B in 2026 through 2028. Back to the effluent disposal, we're submitting the Sandy River Outfall and PDS permit application for review. I believe that'll be an iterative process, conversations with DEQ for a year, potentially more. There'll be a very significant public involvement process. Moving forward to get the money to build the outfall, we need to go through a NEPA process, which is completing the environmental permits required before we can apply for the money. Once that money's in, we'd go through the design process, and I see construction going into 2029, potentially 2030. This is all going to be laid out in the facility plan amendment. But from what I know now, I think these are reasonable timeframes to think about short-term, long-term solutions. In terms of program funding, currently we're using a clean water SRF loan. This will finish up in winter 2023, along with the completion of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. The loan for the phase 1A projects is at 20.7 million all in. Clean water SRF loans currently have better interest rates. And so we applied for a second one in August of 2022 to have that option. We should be hearing that shortly. We were also issued an EPA congressionally directed $1 million grant. I've been working through what to apply that for. We also, thanks to all the work of everyone here, received an ARPA state grant funding for 14.7 million. We just completed the paperwork to start drawing on that, and that is funding the basin work in Basin 6 and 7, as well as the facility plan amendment, and we've reserved funds for more work and rehabilitation at the existing treatment plant. And we're also working on finalizing our WIFIA application. If that is submitted in October, it's about a 6-month process to go through all the loan underwriting, and that would be available to draw on April or May of last year. It's a long process. Interest rates are climbing. Those are projected right now to be 4.5%, which is why we applied for the WIFIA loan, because we're trying to put together the best funding package we can. In terms of public engagement, Jeff handles much of that brilliantly, I think. Clean Water Wednesdays, communication focus. There was a recent Sandy Clean Waters overview video of a lot of the work, including the installation and work at the Aeration basin, and highlighting the success of the influent infiltration work, as well as facility plan amendment talking points. There definitely have been a lot of questions about what we plan to do near term, long term. And then upcoming council action items to wrap it up. We will have a Clean Water SRF loan amendment authorization coming soon, fall of 2020, fall. Leeway owners rep services are needed to take us through the stress test. We've known that since the spring, but I do need to bring an amendment before you for their services. The WIFIA loan master agreement, the approval of the KJ facility plan amendment contract, and I think early winter, it will be the approval of the Stantec program management contract, because I'm in negotiations with them right now. And that's what I have.